So this morning we are presenting a print from a watercolor, an original watercolor by Kyo-un Sokuzan called The Paradise of Maitreya. This is an interpretation by Kyo-un Sokuzan based on a small detail of a head shaving ceremony for monks in the 13th, 14th century Chinese Buddhist wall painting, which was a dry fresco on clay and straw substrate, painted by Zhu Haogou. It was originally housed in the Xinhua Si Buddhist temple of Xiaoning, Shanxi, China. But in the 1920s and 30s, the wall painting was disassembled and moved to the Royal Ontario Museum of Toronto, Canada, where it remains today. This limited edition of 108 G-clay prints, The Paradise of Maitreya, is from an original watercolor by Kyo-un Sokuzan, which in full size, which hangs in Senchu's office next door. The full-size painting is 30 inches by 40 inches. This is an 18 by 24, that's the image size. It's printed on 229.7 Epson cold press acid-free archival paper. And we are offering these at $250 unmatted and unframed. And then shipping and handling would be extra. We're sending those out via priority mail, so it's $20 to cover domestic shipping, handling, and insurance. We have just launched this on our website today. There is a link. Jim Johnson has worked diligently the last couple of days to get this live for us on the website, so you are welcome to go to the website and purchase the prints, either via mail or through PayPal. So thank you. This is a fundraiser for our temple, and the funds will help remodel the upstairs for a Gampa, which is a Tibetan shrine room. Thank you.
Since we started a little bit different, should we do names this morning? Or not? Okay, we'll forego the names. This morning's Dharma talk is titled Receive First. Receive First. And this is based on an idea that's been around a long time. The one that comes to mind is Dogen's message to practitioners. Dogen Genjokoan from the 13th century, the founder of the Soto lineage of Zen Buddhism, and he said, when one goes out towards the world or towards the dharmas, or goes out and goes out and goes out, pushing on this, pulling on this, interpreting that, stepping out of one's basic situation into others' territory, this is called delusion, confusion, and all the other words that you could assign there. So going out towards that. when the world comes to you, he also said, and I paraphrase here, when the world is coming towards you and you allow everything to come towards you, this is called awakening, clarity, enlightenment, realization. So when I say in this talk title, receive first, I'm basically saying that let whatever situation you're in, let it occur. Let the situation happen before you immediately jump to a conclusion, you could say premature, or based on your causes and conditions, based on hope and fear, based on. Just let the world happen to you. Let people talk. Let people finish their sentence. Wait for the period. Wait for the question mark. There may be one. And even at the end of that, you could still allow a little bit more space. If we do that, then there's the other kind of generosity. Most people think of generosity as giving, helping, going out, doing things, having a whatever, Red Cross or a nurse's hat or something. But they don't wear hats anymore. But the kind of generosity that is not particularly thought of is give. Give everyone your attention. Very subtle. Give someone your attention. Anytime anybody comes in front of you, sits down, whether it's at home, in the coffee shop, or when they pull up next to you in a car, give them your attention. Listen to them. Receive whatever ideas, concepts, comments that they wish to make. When you do that, you'll find that there's plenty of time to respond to that. Someone says this, this, and this. You can listen to that, and then you may not say anything. You may say, "What do you mean?" Excuse me. So it is about actually beginning to resonate, or even, you could even say, dance with the environment that's happening in front of you, to move with that situation in such a way that doesn't create more warfare, doesn't create more confusion. When someone comes at you or towards you with a bunch of confusion, wait a little while before you immediately jump on board with your ideas, your opinions, your judgments, your advice. Like that. Wait. Allow some space. When someone talks to you, says something to you, you could actually allow some space before you respond. They might have more to say. And you might come back and say, well, what if it's an emergency? What if there's something that might happen if I need to get in there right away and fix that, or stop them, or change their mind, or whatever it may be. Pardon me. I'm not saying that there aren't times when that may be the case, but if you're busy filling up space all the time, if your condition, if your habit energy is always to jump the gun on everything, then when that time does come, because your impulse is to fill in the space, fill in the space, fill in the space, never allow any space, then when that situation does arrive, where someone really does need you to say something, does need your help, you'll be busy filling up the space because of habit. So what do you think of that? Now, if someone comes and they're terrified about something and are in a real fix, and they're asking you, what should I do? What should I do? Then, you could still wait a little bit to see what is this that's happening. Because if you notice, as soon as you hear a sharp noise, or as soon as the phone rings, or it doesn't matter what it is, you immediately start to think about ahead of time. We start to prepare ourselves for who that is, what's happening. We jump the gun. It's very hard to hear a noise outside the building, one that you perhaps never heard before, and immediately start going down a list of things it could possibly be. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, while you're going down the list of things that could possibly be, whatever started happening is still probably occurring. So our preconceptions about things tend to do this to our awareness. It actually stops us from looking at it. It's not such a bad thing to just not know what something is. Give it, you could say, the benefit of the doubt to be whatever it is. So this doesn't mean, what I'm saying doesn't mean that you shut down completely and never say anything, never have any comments on anything, never offer any help to anyone. I'm not saying, I'm not going to the extreme. It's just that we already have the extreme in a lot of situations with people where we're immediately rushing into something with our ideas, our opinions, our judgments, our evaluations, pointing this, pointing that, to try to keep everything filled up. Space, from the point of view, which it is a point of view, of ego, makes ego nervous. Because ego wants to know, is this right? Is this wrong? What's going to happen? Aren't we wasting time here with all this space nonsense? Shouldn't we be getting busy and taking care of problems? So I very much, when I give Dharma talks, and I've given a few, I very much like to interact with people. This is a very important aspect to the way that I teach anyway, is let it alone. Let things happen so that you can see what they are, so that when you do come and put your, as they say, 2 cents worth in, it is based on a lot of clarity about what this is, a lot of understanding. If someone comes to me and says, and starts talking to me about their problems, their relationship, their addictions, or whatever they are, I spend a lot of time listening before I give them any advice at all. If they ask me right away, I'll probably say, I don't know. If you've tried meditation, I might say that. I tend to be highly opinionated about that. But not to the point that I think everybody should meditate. So who should meditate? That's the question. Who should meditate? Any ideas? I'll tell you, people who are ready to do that. It shouldn't be sold. Don't sell meditation to anyone. If they're ready, then they'll kind of let you know. Now, when I talk about that, I think of the children that you guys have little children that meditate. That's a different situation. Children are ready to try anything. If you said, You want to meet a dragon? Yeah. You got one? Whereas an adult would immediately say, be suspicious and be paranoid, and the red flags would go up, and what are you selling? You know, like that. So, but with the children, with a child, you still would receive. You would in that situation, you would watch. You would have them meditate for a minute max to start with, and you would time it to start and time it to stop, and then it would be over with. And no more. Only more if they want you to. If they want to keep going, that's different. Then they're letting you know. They're giving you permission to help them with that. Most children are very curious about everything. Whereas with an adult, even one who is having a great deal of difficulty, and perhaps you're a meditator and you've been thinking this would really be good for Jim or Mary or someone, what they're going through, if they just had an awareness practice, it would really help them a lot. Mind your own business. Don't interfere with that person. That does not mean that if you're on receive 90% of the time, they're probably going to let you know. They'll even notice that you never mention meditation, even though you spend an hour a day doing that yourself. But you never mention it to them. They might even say, why don't you try to get me to meditate? And then that's your opening. I don't know, did you want to learn to meditate? And what that comes down to in words would be respect. You respect the other person. They know about meditation. I mean, it's all over the place. You know, all you have to do is look at the cover of any Time magazine. Meditation. Mindfulness. And they take out all the vowels. So that because it's a marketing technique. Eventually they're going to be calling cars Bodhisattva. Don't you want to ride a Ford Bodhisattva? It's coming, more than likely. Questions are good if you have them, sir. Tayo.
You talked about habit energy in relationship to space.
Yes.
For me, an example of study group is a question asked, and that space in my mind immediately fills it. So how can I see the space when my mind's constantly spinning in the space that was created?
Yeah. Well, you can't really see space. It's a concept that points to something that isn't there.
How can I receive when I've already filled the space?
Well, to start with, you're actually aware, because you are a meditator, you're aware that you're filling space. Keep watching that. You may have to watch that for weeks, months, maybe longer. You may have to watch that constant impulse to just things start to open up too much. It gets a little bit kind of freaky to ego or to self-centeredness. That's too much space, too much insecurity. And Pema Chodron wrote a book once, or a book of talks of hers, and the title of it was The Wisdom of Insecurity. And the reason you have that it's a good title, the reason you have that kind of a dynamic is that is wisdom, is no reference point. It's like space. It's not space, but it's like space. And it extends forever. And it goes spatially forever. It extends forever in time. And that's your birthright, everyone's birthright here. You actually can realize that yourself before this body mind that you have, that you call me, before it passes back into the elements or dirt. You actually could realize that. You could have realized it 3 lifetimes ago, but you ignored what somebody told you and said, no, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to meditate. If you're in this room, you probably have heard this message before. Because I'm not teaching kindergarten, yes.
A housekeeping item, could you move your microphone closer? There's a lot of rustling noise interfering.
I noticed that when I have it too close to my mouth, my COPD breathing tends to fill up a lot of space.
Okay.
We'll try that. So, Senchu's going to jail. Tell him I said hello.
I will.
Good. More on that? Yes.
Shane Dog, you say to include people's body language in the room they're in
Yes.
when you're trying to work with someone. So what's valuable about that in helping a person?
Observing what is happening through any of the sense fields besides the mind or including the mind, it just spreads your awareness out so that your awareness isn't sucked into the vortex we call the thinking process. That's where, in the seventh consciousness, that's where ego or self-centeredness resides. Ego does not reside in the sense of seeing, the visual sense, any of the first five sense consciousness. It doesn't reside there. There's no self there. There's just seeing. There's just smelling. And then it's the thinking process that says, I'm seeing, I'm smelling, I'm hearing, I'm tasting. And this establishes an ego or the aggregates, form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. It brings those together as a self or as an apparent self. And so when you're sitting and you're listening to someone, you're listening to what they're saying, also include their movements of their body. Not because, I'm not saying you interpret it like if they go like this, it means they're being casual. If they go like this, they're being silly. If they go like this, they're being threatening. Although they might be. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, it's just include it. And include their voice going up and down. That's hearing. So seeing, hearing, and if they haven't washed in a little while, you might want to include smelling. So in other words, you're using all the other sense fields. The thinking process doesn't get to just be totally territorial about this, and don't do anything. I'll take care of it. Well, we'll think our way through this. Well, thinking is blind. It can't hear, can't see, can't smell, can't touch, can't do anything. Especially when it isolates itself in what I call an opinion, or a position, or a judgment, or an evaluation. So the simple process or activity of sitting in front of someone and you're endeavoring to help and watching what they do, then that, along with, it's an invisible mixture. You're not going to be able to see the way what you're seeing gets blended with the thoughts, but it just doesn't separate from it. It's just another form of sense consciousness, or it's another form of awareness. It's awareness of objects that move in space, awareness of objects that resonate like sound, or the awareness of what happens on your taste buds or your nerve endings, how this feels. So is that helpful? You have a deeper part of that? More?
So how is the choicelessness, how does the choicelessness show up when you're on receive?
Well, there isn't anybody. If you're just receiving doesn't reinforce a receiver. But sending things out does reinforce someone who's sending things out. I'm doing this. I'm pushing this button. I'm pulling this lever. I'm telling that person, giving them a piece of my mind. Or I'm doing this. But we don't necessarily think too much. A little, we don't. But when you taste banana cream pie, you don't think I am tasting banana cream pie. You don't establish a receiving part of it. It's the pushing and pulling. It's the aggression part that seems to bring up some kind of bundle of opinions, ideas, concepts, and stick them together. And that's me, and that's where we get threatened. But to just be on receive is threatening to this to self-centeredness, because it doesn't get any credentials there. It's Buddha Dharma, or awakened truth, without credentials. No credentials. You're just a nobody. You just get to watch, hear, see, smell, touch, taste, even think. Just use all of your senses. Making some sense? Good. Yes?
How do you send things out without a self?
You don't. If you send something out, that's an ego. So I can say a little bit more than that. If you watch, if you're on receive, then you're also going to be on receive when you send something out. You're going to see that something is leaving you. It might be your pointing finger. It might be your chocolate layer cake that you're sending out. But it's not. There's not really a self doing it. It's just going. You're also receiving that. You're receiving the image of that happening. So it's also receiving. Further questions, please. Yes.
Question from Sheldon in Union City.
Yes, Sheldon.
How can we allow space without making it just another thing we think we can control?
You don't have to allow space. Just stop filling it up. Just don't particularly fill it up. And the way you do that is to see the way you keep adding on and filling up and filling up and filling. You have to watch that process. If you wanted to stop some kind of a habit of doing some kind of habitual pattern that you've been doing and doing and doing, the way you would start that is not to, every time you do it, hit yourself in the head with a hammer, because what that does is make your head hurt. It doesn't stop. It might interrupt what you're doing, but as soon as the pain goes away, you're right back to the habitual. What you have to do is you have to watch what the habit is. You have to look at it very closely. You have to watch small parts of that habit. When you reach for the candy bar, open the package, take out the candy bar. The whole eternity is going by there. And of course, nothing bad about candy bars, especially Mounds. Haven't had one of those in 20 years. Buy me one, will you?
You're diabetic.
Oh, I'm diabetic, that's right. Yes, sir. Tayo.
So when I see the spinning, how can I see the energy that is fueling the spinning?
You don't have to do that. You don't have to have some kind of thing where, oh yes, I'm for a while I just saw the spinning, but now I see the energy. Don't do it. It's just very simple. Just observe on it, and it's like a just touch and go. If you see it, don't hang on to it. As this is information. I'm finally seeing this. I need to clamp down on this. Don't do it, because that's from the point of view of wisdom. That looks like this. So just you touch on it. It's there and it goes. It's like weather. It rains and it clears up. Then it rains and it clears up. So you don't have to manipulate or control that part. Just observe it, and it will, like a self-cleaning oven. Was that funny? We have a self-cleaning oven, but it doesn't really do clean completely because it won't clean the mouse turds out of there. Why won't it do that? There must be a setting on there. I'm embarrassing my wife. Oh, I never thought of that. We could clean them out. That's an idea.
Just receive the mice.
Yeah, receive the mouse excrement. Questions on this idea of, yes?
How is receiving self-existing?
Did I say it was self-existing?
Well, my understanding is there's no receiver.
Okay.
And whatever arising is self-existing.
Well, then you pretty much explained it.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions from someone who hasn't asked questions? From someone who's terrified to ask a question? Yes? You? Go ahead.
How does the sitting practice of meditation then help us receive off the cushion?
Well, that's a good question, and it's one I think you probably already know. But thank you for asking that, because it's a good thing to cover. When you actually bring yourself into a position where you're in this room, in this zendo, this meditation hall, or at home, in your bedroom, or in your living room, or wherever, and you sit down and you hold your body very still, and you endeavor to just observe what's coming towards you, what's happening. Sense of feeling, sense of touch. You're not creating the sense of touch on your butt on the cushion or on the floor or on the chair. You didn't create this mudra. You put the two hands together, but you didn't make the hands. So you created this much of it. And then by practicing, by stretching that awareness, so you spend more and more time just seeing what happens. Just watching the thoughts come. The thoughts come in, and they walk by, and they keep on going, unless you interrupt them with comments. If you say anything to those thoughts or describe them, they turn right around and you give them a reality that they do not have. If you believe your thoughts, you'll suffer. If you disbelieve your thoughts, you will suffer. And that's not a condemnation of anybody. It's an observation based on what? Watching my own thoughts for long, long periods of time. And adding to this and subtracting from that, and evaluations. Question?
You titled the talk "Receive First."
Yes.
Is there a second?
Well, if you really have that going and you understand what that is, receive first, then every time you talk to somebody, see something, or go into a hardware store, if you're on receive, then you're ready to be with whatever arises, albeit an unfriendly clerk. Someone in the store that's you're trying to buy something, and they're kind of in your way, and they're not even buying anything. They're just going back and forth, and and you're trying to figure out how to get to the marshmallows. And what do they got marshmallows in a hardware store for anyway? Because they're trying to make money, and so they'll hang that right between the pliers and the screwdrivers, because they know that you're an impulse buyer. So if it's receive first, that means that that's a priority. You're going to receive what the world is doing, and if you can, don't add to it. Don't add on to it. But if you see very, very clearly, then any addition that does come out of you as you saying something or doing something or moving in a particular direction will, if not altogether coming out of awareness, at least will be shaped by or affected by your clarity around what that is, and not just your opinion on how to fight with something or disagree with something or agree with something. So that would be second. First receive, and then add if you need to. First see what it is before you add on things, because quite often what happens is something will happen and we immediately have all kinds of ideas about it. We don't even know fundamentally what it's even about yet. I do that. I do it all the time. I don't know if I do it daily, but I certainly do it every few days. I see where I've just invented something that was not true about something that was happening. I might not necessarily take it to the bank. In other words, I might not necessarily clamp down on it and say this is true, but I notice that I have a tendency to kind of go along and give that the benefit of the doubt for a lot longer than I perhaps would have had I just been on receive, had I just been receiving that situation. You all are experiencing this, some version of this all the time, and all I'm saying is a sitting practice of meditation, as Unyo has asked about, will help you increase that ability to see clearly. And eventually, if you're, shall we say, lucky, or whatever else is showing up as causes and conditions, you may have the final breakthrough or the complete breakthrough or the fundamental misunderstanding, which is that there's a self that can even receive anything, that there is a solid, separate being who can do anything. Things are just done and things are just received. Until that's understood, we continue to fight with our world, disagree with it, agree with it, shut down on it. More.
Is it possible to stay on receive all of the time?
No. We don't have to stay on anything. If that's there, then the causes and conditions that are affecting your body, mind, and all of the different complexes that we could even talk about are being moved this way and that way. And eventually what happens is there's no receiver. So then you may be watching a receiving happening. You may be watching going out happening. You may feel like you have some say-so about something for a while, and then that goes away, but you don't mind because you have respect for other people, for situations, and you're no longer interested particularly in a credential that says, I'm doing really well, or I'm interested in correcting a credential that says, we're going to take your gold stars away. Look what a bad boy you've been. You ever had that feeling? No. Yes, sir.
Perceiving, observing, and then there seems to be, I need to change.
Yeah.
What is that need?
It's ego, self-centeredness. Wants things to be different than they are. And it's not that you wouldn't want some things to be. We're not saying that that's incorrect. We're saying that to continually fuel that and buy into that will cause you to spin. And it will cause you to be uncomfortable. And the degree to which that gets wider and wider purchase on the environment and on other people, you'll cause other people to start to spin. Because if they're around you, if you notice that when somebody's spinning and you're around them, you start to pick up on that. If you see somebody just totally enraged, you can feel your own anger start to come up. You're not even mad at them, but you start to get angry about something just because somebody else is just out of their mind with anger. One more? No. Okay. It's time to have the daily Dharma gathering. Those of you who can stay, we have a daily Dharma gathering starting in about 10 minutes or so. Thank you so much for coming.
First, we'll dedicate the merit that's in the back of your blue pamphlets. And I would also like to call your attention once again to the donation boxes we have in the hallway. We value these teachings and the teachers who help support our endeavor. Please visit our website for further information about the ability to purchase one of the Paradise of Maitreya prints. Thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shi-hu, shi-son bu-sa mo-ko-sa, mo-ko-ja-ho-ro-mi. 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.